I really think the news media, the mainstream news media, has been trying to change the paradigm somewhat. ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN. Not Fox, not ONN, not Newsmax, but the other. But I still find that they are not doing enough to push back against those who continue to misinform, those who continue to lie. In fact, George Stephanopoulos today did a fairly good job, but he allowed Senator John Barrasso to get away with too much. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
And let's start out with what Speaker Pelosi said about that COVID relief package. As you heard her say, she believes that more than 90% is going to go towards COVID relief and expressed surprise, bemusement that Republicans couldn't go along with it.
Well, to call this COVID relief is really false advertising. Only 9% of the money actually goes to defeating the virus. Only 1% of the money goes for vaccines. This is a Nancy Pelosi payoff to the liberal left. This is something she's been working on a long time. So, today we see her taking a victory lap to what is now known as the most progressive bill in the history of the United States, according to the White House. And the price of it shows that.
I am happy that he called that bill a liberal wish list and all the bad things they say about that bill. You know why? Because when we itemize everything in that bill, the one thing that we see is that it helps people. The tax cut scam that they passed for $2.3 billion didn't. They didn't complain about that. But this one, which you can see it materially helping people, materially helping small businesses. Oh, it's a liberal wish list? All liberals, all progressives should say, yes, it is. It's that wish list that is helping people. It's that wish list that Americans all want.
We have 3 vaccines that are very effective. That's what President Biden has inherited, a recovering economy. So Republicans want to make sure people get shots in the arms, kids get back to school, people get back to work. But we are not going to stand with the Democrats as they try to exploit a crisis to send lots of money to big cities and to blue states and to really failed pension plans. This is not supposed to be a bailout. It's supposed to be about helping get the disease behind us.
What they're talking about is capitulation. When he speaks about all this money going to blue states, all this money going to pension plans, let's get it straight. The reality is all the states, these red states that these Republicans are coming from, they are states that take away every single year more money from the federal government than they put in. The economy is still on a slide, and it shows every single week when we see those new people applying for unemployment support. Donald Trump did not leave a growing economy. Donald Trump did not leave policy to mitigate the coronavirus epidemic. All these changes started to occur when we had leadership that decided to take on all these issues front and center, from making sure people had money, making sure people didn't go bankrupt, making sure people didn't get kicked out of their homes, all the way up to stimulating an economy that's going to look very different.
This coronavirus relief bill was not supposed to be about $1,400 checks to illegal immigrants or $1,400 checks to felons who are behind bars. Wasn't supposed to be about block grants to sanctuary cities or money to schools that continue to stay closed. Look, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the problems with this bill. The bill is going to come due for this. And ultimately, as you just heard Nancy Pelosi say today to you, taxes are going to be next on the Democrats' agenda.
All those things that he said, people in jail are going to get $1,400. Okay, what is the problem there again? Every citizen that makes under a certain amount gets $1,400. People in jail are citizens too. The other thing, as far as nobody's illegal, as far as undocumented people residing in the United States getting that stimulus, to get the stimulus, you would have had to file your IRS report. If you are paying taxes, you're getting back some of your money, period. They make these things look sinister, but they're not. They're just instruments to allow this economy to move forward instruments to stimulate an economy that's needed.
Let's talk about the filibuster. There seems to be Democratic support coalescing around the idea of requiring the minority to do it the old-fashioned way, hold the floor by talking around the clock. What's wrong with that approach?
Well, there's nothing wrong with talking. The issue is how many votes does it take to get to moving forward with legislation? You know, this coronavirus bill was done by reconciliation, which allows for a majority of votes to win the day. You know, we have a 50-50 Senate. That's what the American people sent to Washington. With the vice president breaking the tie. You know, George, that ought to be a mandate to move to the middle. So we ought to do things that actually can get broad bipartisan support, like the infrastructure bill that came out of my committee last time. That's the best way to get things done. If you get things that are one vote and the vice president breaking a tie, harder for America to buy into that thing. The major pieces of legislation for our country historically have been done in a broad bipartisan way.
What they're talking about is capitulation. The reality is the 50 senators that are Democratic represent a whole lot more people than the 50 senators that are Republican. The Republican senators haven't represented a majority of voters since 1996. We have had Republican rule in the Senate for many of those years between 1996 and 2021, and they have not represented a majority of Americans since then. But it's worse. They've been able, with a minority, to blow up the filibuster to appoint three Supreme Court justices. So let's not talk about or listen to them speak about bipartisanship, because it doesn't really work and they themselves do not practice it. Let's get real.
To be clear, you have no problem with going back to the talking filibuster?
Well, I don't mind talking. I think that people ought to be able to stand and express their views. The question is it 50 votes or 51 or is it 60? And the current number is 60. But we've had this going on now for over a century. And the idea is to get bipartisan buy-in to bills. If there are parts that are very partisan, they ought to be left out. Focus on the areas on which we can agree. On most items, I think you can agree with 80% of the things. So let's leave out the 20%, which are the hot button issues, and move the country forward on issues on which we agree.
It is time for us to remember the people that continue to do well for this country, how the bills are written. You show me your bill, and I show you what you care for. And this is, Hope, one of our listeners sent me this. Take a look at that bill. What you see is when we had the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in other words, the tax cut scam, only 16% of the money went to people that make less than $75,000. 54% went to people making over $75,000. Look at what we have today. Today we have 44% of that money going to individuals. We just the separation of the bill. We have 1.75 trillion of that 1.9 trillion dollars going to people, going to spending, going to doing things that help people. Most of the money, zero in the tax cut scam, was spent specifically for doing things for people. We have to remember these things. You have to remind Republicans when they come on TV and spew these lies and misinformation, we have to correct it so that the lie does not metastasize. A metastasizing lie is the reason we had January 6th, the unpatriotic, seditious insurrection that almost toppled the country. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.